Welcome to the Know Your Ship podcast, presented by eHub. I'm your host, Frank Dolce. Well, hey, thanks for stopping by.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here talking with Luis Ruiz. Please tell me I said that correctly.
Luis Camarillo Ruiz. You absolutely
I love
did.
it.
Yeah.
I wish I could say it like that.
Yeah.
But
I don't speak
butcher
a
it.
shred of Spanish, by the way.
You just did.
I did.
Saying your name, you just did.
I can make
awesome.
my way through a Mexican restaurant, but that's about the extent of it.
Let me ask you something, since you mentioned that, because I grew up in Southern California. You have lived in Southern California most of your life?
Yeah, I was born in Southern California, lived there, and my father was a professor, so we bopped around a few places, ended up in Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
So my formative years are Northern California, San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah.
And then back for graduate school, and then we stayed. So been in LA since the mid-90s.
Gotcha. Okay. Here's the question. Best Mexican restaurant in LA, Southern California.
El Cholo.
I know. That's what
Amazing, right?
I wouldn't disagree with that.
Yeah.
Like El Cholo is.
And they have a couple
It's
locations that I heard they
unbelievable.
made their way up to Salt Lake.
They did.
Someone said, "Oh yeah, there's El Cholo in Salt Lake." I was like, "Really?"
Yeah. But there's not. I'm just going to say this. There's nothing like the original.
Yeah,
There's nothing
sure.
like the original.
for sure.
So, but I grew up in Culver City, which is also the home of Tito's Tacos. And so
I love it.
I have a huge affinity for Tito's Tacos.
Yeah, Tito's Tacos. We would run there at about 2:00. Remember, they used to be open till like
They
2 or
used
3
to
in the
be,
morning.
yes.
And you could.
It
My wife
was
and
the
I would go,
best.
"Oh my gosh, we're craving Tito's Tacos," and
Right.
I'd get in the car at 1:00 and drive and get a box of tacos.
Yeah.
Delicious.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
the best. It was the best. Well, listen, Luis, you have been in this, well, I want to say the entertainment industry. That may not be correct. I'll let you tell me exactly which industry it is, maybe more of the marketing side of it, but have created a company since what, about 2015? Silo Films?
Silo Films has been around formally as a corporation since 2004.
Gotcha. And you started that company.
Yeah.
Tell me, let's talk about the genesis of Silo Films, because I know you have a background in kind of this film marketing space. We were talking about your experience with Mattel. How did you get involved with Silo? Or what is the story behind Silo Films?
Yeah. Silo Films is a creative boutique, meaning we're both an agency and we're a production company. So we fulfill both needs. We take everything from creative all the way through delivery. And we do everything from broadcast, social, sizzle videos, any of the content needs, which is everything nowadays, right? And we're focused in the youth market. And if you would have told me when I was going through graduate school in the mid-90s, I went to Cal Arts, that there's this youth market that focuses on toys and these kinds of product and goods, we call it, tabletop. I would have never imagined that even existed. I didn't know it existed. And I kind of really just stumbled into that field. I was an editor in the 90s, and I was a commercial editor. I did a lot of stuff like, Skechers, that was a new brand at the time, a startup, and things like brands like Ford and the Olympics and bigger stuff. And at the time in the 90s, these toy companies would have what's called the New York Toy Fair, and it was a big deal. And they would have these entrance pieces that were epic as you came into Barbie, as you came into Hot Wheels or whatever it was, right? Monopoly. And as you entered that area, there would be this big, huge video that would be playing. And it was a branded piece of content. And so they used to bring commercial people in to do this branded content. And I came in as a commercial editor to cut one year, like 97, 98, and got to know the guys. And the next year they asked me to direct one of those pieces. And I had directed before. So I was prepared and ready for my graduate experience. I had directed for a music video company. In fact, I was nominated for a Grammy, which was a total fluke, for a guy named James McMurtry in a category that doesn't exist in the Grammys anymore. So it opened a door for me to kind of get into music videos. So I had done it, and when that opportunity came to direct this piece for Mattel, it turned out well. And it turned out to be a big hit. And it opened up more doors. And the next thing I know, I'm going down that path. So it was unplanned. It wasn't part of a business plan that I wrote out and said, this is where I'm going to go. I'm going to work in the youth market and I'm going to do products and goods. It just kind of, the path led me there, but I was prepared when I got there. And when the opportunity presented itself, I was able to, ultimately provide something that was really extraordinary for them.
Yeah. What would you be doing if this wasn't the path that you took? What were your passions prior to this?
Yeah. Well, I went to film school at BYU, and I thought, I'm going to be a filmmaker. I think we all thought, we're coming out of film school, and we're going to be a filmmaker.
Yeah.
And I certainly did my fair share of films. I realized how difficult it was to pull off a really good film, how costly. Your chances of making a great film and not going totally bankrupt are not very good, right? I mean, you have a greater chance at winning the lottery than you do of making a great film.
Yeah.
Is
that true?
I think it is true. 100%.
I would bet that's true.
Yeah.
But we only hear, you hear about the flops for sure, but mostly you hear about, the mavericks of the world, like the films that go the Star Wars of the world. And so you come out of that and you think, well, I'm going to be that guy.
Yeah. And you naively move forward, and you have to, and luckily I had a marketable skill. I knew how to edit. There was a new non-linear editing system called Avid, and I knew how to run that. And so I had this marketable skill. So while I was trying to pursue things as a director, I was also making money. I also had two little kids. So I had the responsibility of, I got to pay the bills. So I couldn't just sit around and go, hey, I'm fantasizing about someday being a director and making a movie. I had to actually go make money. I had to go work. So by just going and doing, there were opportunities that I never imagined that came about. And I think there's some value in that. Sometimes we just think pie in the sky and, hey, we're going to just go out and do this or that. And sometimes we just need to just let the rubber hit the road and go do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great advice. And sometimes people just get stuck. You're not going and doing, but you've had opportunities and you seized upon that. And were those things, did that lead you to where you are today? Were they related to the things that you're doing today? Or was it just like more experience that you could lean on as you start building your own career?
Well, as I started editing, I basically started skipping around in a bunch of related fields, and I kind of learned how to kind of make the sausage in a way. So I edited. I was a director with a music video company. I directed a bunch of music videos. As I got to know the guys at Mattel, they had an in-house agency, so they hired me to come in and work as a creative.
Oh,
so I was kind of learning to do all these things, Yeah. And I was learning from others too. So the education continued beyond graduate school. And so that was really valuable because around 2004, I was represented by a production company as a director called Green Dot Films. And they had a threshold. They wouldn't do any work below a certain amount. And so I had the head of Mattel ended up going to another company. And he said, hey, I've got all these spots for you to do. Would you like to do them? And I went to this company and I said, hey, I've got these opportunities. And they said, that's below our threshold. You go do them on your own. And so I went and did them on my own.
So there you go.
So in 2004, I did this little package of spots that the company thought was too risky to do. And it was probably too risky for them. It wasn't too risky for me. It was an opportunity.
Right.
So I took it. And those 5 spots, the next year turned into like 30 spots. So what was $400,000 or $500,000 all of a sudden turned into millions of dollars. Wow. And then all of a sudden the company's like, we'll take it. I said, actually, we're going to part ways. They were great. They were fabulous. And it made sense at that point. We parted ways and I started my company.
That's the beginning of
Silo. Yeah, that was the beginning. I just went, it's a no-brainer. I'll just go do this myself.
Why Silo? What's behind the name?
My graduate thesis project was initially called Silo. And it was a story about these Gen Xers that are on a road trip. They hear about an apparition of Christ on the side of a silo. some rust that's been left over from a farmer that's been sandblasting the silo.
Mm-hmm.
And it's become a location of much religious fervor. So people have, in the neighborhood and all over, have come to kind of witness this incredible apparition. And by the time they get there in the road trip, it's over. There's nothing there. And they just kind of hang. It's a road trip.
Yeah.
So the film initially was called Silo. And so that's my DBA, and I just continue that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I had a theory about how you came up with Silo.
Yeah.
And it was based on the fact that you were a student at BYU.
Yeah.
Pretty close to Lehigh, roller mills.
Yeah.
The silos.
Sure. Inspired by the silo.
So inspired, right?
Or maybe I was really into missiles.
Yeah. Something like that. Your story is way better. And there's
Yeah.
nothing like a story about a road trip. I mean, that's kind of a classic.
Totally.
Yeah.
2 guys, 2 girls. And it actually was inspired. A friend of mine got this old muscle car, Sports Fury,
Mhm.
big orange, massive car. And it was so cool. And I said, wow, this car is amazing. I go, we got to figure out a story or a movie that we can make that uses your car. And so I had taken a road trip myself the summer before on something called the Green Tortoise, where it goes from San Francisco and it goes all the way across to Boston.
Mhm.
And everybody on the bus, it's like a hippie bus. It takes 15 days to get to Boston. And everybody votes on the way they want to go. It's like, oh, let's go to Nashville. Let's go to, Austin, whatever.
It's like a choose your own adventure.
Kind of.
on the-
You
the
just have to get to
bus.
Boston in 15 days. And I just thought, so everybody on the bus kind of bonds
Yeah.
because you're stuck on this old,
Yeah.
it's called
Absolutely.
the Green Tortoise. And I just thought, something about the road, and I've always loved road trips.
Yeah.
So it's
I
these
do
2
too.
guys, 2 girls that, go on this road trip. They stop at all these cool places, and it's just about self-discovery, and they're just yapping. And, it was inspired a lot by Jim Jarmusch and some of the European filmmakers, Wim
Mhm.
Wenders, where they just kind of wander and they talk, and there's not a heavy-duty plot that's driving it. It's
Yeah.
just character-driven.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do a film like that.
You
And I saw
know-
the car, and I was inspired.
Yeah. Absolutely. You've seen The Green Mile. I'm
yeah.
sure. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like a road trip film.
Yeah.
But there's a deep message
Totally.
in that film
Totally.
as well.
Yeah.
But it's a road trip. I mean, it's
Yeah.
these 2 guys from completely different cultures discovering each other, driving across the country.
That's what it is. It's real simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
Great
so
story.
that's where the name of the company comes from.
That's amazing. I love it. Okay, you mentioned that you did a few music videos,
Mm-hmm.
and once upon a time, I was of the generation, you may be as well, kind of the generation where MTV really started to
Oh,
explode,
it's huge.
and music videos were.
Of course, I'm from that generation.
Yeah, music videos were all the rage. So,
Yeah.
and you got to be in that industry. So, do you have any? I mean, I think people have this kind of romanticized vision of what a music video is and what it looks like and how it's produced and the glamour and everything else. What's the story of music videos, and do you have a favorite, or do you have just a story about making a music video?
Well, yeah, it definitely came from the era of music videos.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 90s, it was sort of at its height. And I worked with, the company I was with represented mostly R&B and rap. So not exactly the genre I wanted to be in, but it was a huge genre to be in. And, at the time, David Fincher and some of these other directors were huge, and they came up through the ranks, and obviously they've done very well in their
Mhm.
careers, and they're amazing. So the videos I did, you've never heard of those artists. So they were all up-and-coming artists. At the time, you would have to make a video sometimes to get a record contract. So you would do a video, and then you would pitch your song or album to the record label.
Gotcha.
So I was doing a lot of I was doing entry-level videos and kind of the $50,000 to $100,000 video, which now that's a pretty good budget.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time they were spending $500,000 to $1 million minimum on music videos in the 90s. And I was in that $50,000 to $100,000 range. I was literally sometimes I would put my own director's rate back in the video just because I wanted it to look cool.
Gotcha.
So it wasn't a very profitable effort, but it was, again, part of the learning process. And we had we shot a rap group in East Palo Alto. When they say you live on the wrong side of the tracks,
Mhm.
literally the tracks cut through Palo Alto,
Yeah.
Stanford on one
I'm
side,
familiar with those tracks.
and their tracks on the other side.
Yes.
That's a rough part of town.
Yeah.
And we shot in that part of town. And it wasn't until about halfway through the day that I noticed I had a police escort everywhere I went. And I remember talking to the policeman, and I said, do you have to be here with us? He goes, oh, 100%. He goes, if I leave your side, your camera and your gear are gone. And I went, whoa, I feel really safe.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was wild. And the guys, like we had a start time at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. They didn't show up. There were some other people that were like, oh, the rap groups, they're sleeping in. They'll be here a little bit later. But I've sent so-and-so, and he's going to take his place. I go, he's not even in the group. They go, yeah, it's all right. Just put him in the video. He's going to rap to the song. Just stuff like that. Just crazy stuff. And then there was a whole scene with like lowriders, and they're bouncing up and down and all that.
Oh, I love it.
And I was like, we had knew 2 or 3 cars were going to come. They're like, oh, don't worry. We're going to put the word out in the community. And there was literally a row of like 12 lowriders. I was like, where did these guys come from? But they just showed up. And we have these cool scenes of these cars bouncing around. It was those kind of videos.
Yeah.
A lot of rap, a lot of crazy stuff, some R&B stuff, some stuff that was a little smoother and cooler. And I wanted to do stuff that was very conceptual. And sometimes it was a little bit limiting. Like they wanted to kind of do the standard cliche stuff, playing dominoes, throwing down a 40. Remember the roof? I shot a couple groups. They would rapping on the roof. I don't know if you remember that trend in the 90s.
Yes.
So the rap group was up there. Why are they rapping on a roof? I don't know, but that was the trend. There they go.
Everybody's
They're up on a
doing
roof.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so when you're shooting a music video, I mean, I think when you think about shooting a film, at least what I think of, okay, there's a script and there's, all these characters and there's this process that you have to go through, and it feels like maybe shooting a music video, maybe there's some element of that, but maybe it's a little more loose than that, and you're kind of
it can be improvisational. It depends how narrative the music video is. But typically, if you're building sets, you might have like 2 or 3 really cool sets, and you would play out the music video multiple times. Like maybe you would do your heroic single of the main singer, the performer, in one particular set. Then you would do the group in another set. I mean, there are strategies. You can see there's a lot to shoot. You figure you're shooting 3.5 minutes worth of content in one day.
That's the next question I was going to ask. How long does it take to shoot a music video? Are you doing that all in one day?
Yeah, typically they only have the money now on a Taylor Swift video that could go for 3 or 4 days. They're also spending $2 million on a video. So for people, most other videos, you're shooting 3.5 minutes worth of content in one day. To give you some perspective, a 30-second commercial, you get one day to shoot.
Yeah.
So to produce that much content, you're moving quickly, and you have to kind of just have some generic setups that you can get a lot of footage out of, so that when you get to the editorial room, you can kind of piece this thing together.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this brings up another question, which I think will lead into the stuff you're doing today.
Yeah.
With Silo. But what's the ROI on a music video? Like, what is the music industry? What is the artist trying to do? Is it sell more records? Is it just get more views? I mean, how does that translate?
I think that's why you're not seeing many videos produced these days, because your rate of return is not very good. So for big stars like a Taylor Swift, some of it's branding. Some of it is to promote a particular song. I mean, when she drops a music video and within 2 or 3 hours, it's got 2 million hits on it, it's getting a lot of traction.
Yeah.
So that's pretty rarefied air. But for maybe some of the beginning bands, they'll do these videos now that are so cheap and done so simply and poorly, but sometimes it's just a way for them to get some recognition. They go, hey, look, if we can just put it on YouTube, maybe someone will discover us, or we can get some eyeballs on it. But that's why most record companies aren't spending much money on music videos anymore. Before, if you had MTV, you had a funnel.
Yeah.
You knew that, hey, look, if I can get into the rotation, I'm going to get some eyes on it.
Right.
And if you remember, on Friday nights, they would have Friday night music videos. And I remember a whole group of us would get together to watch them.
Yeah.
It was an event.
Yeah, it was an event. Well, now you can do I mean, once upon a time, like Mike Tyson fights were an event. Like
huge.
Everybody, the neighborhood would get together, and it was the same with like MTV. Oh wait, the new video's coming out. Everybody, all your friends would get together to watch this.
Well, he's going to be at another event coming up.
Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully he does the knocking out.
Yes.
So.
I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if I should put a bet on that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so music videos. One last question about
Sure,
music
sure.
videos, since you dabbled in that industry a little bit. As you think back, or as you look across the music video landscape, is there one video in particular that you think of that's like, that is the iconic music video? I'm only thinking of one right now because it's the time of year, and that, of course, is Michael Jackson's
Totally.
Thriller.
I was just gonna say Thriller, 100%. And what happens, like at a club, nobody goes to clubs anymore, but they would be playing that video, and everybody on the floor would start doing Thriller.
Oh,
By the way, that was the night I met my wife. So we were at a club, and we ended up talking all night long. And at the end, and we had not gone out to the dance floor, and they played Thriller. I was like, oh, we have to go out. That was enough to get us up out of our chairs to go out and dance, and the rest is history.
To this day, when you hear that song, if you're of our generation, then you're like, all of a sudden, you're like, well, and the moves just start coming out.
And 'tis the season.
You can't even help it.
In a couple of weeks, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's Thriller season.
Well, let's talk about your industry a little bit more. That's not necessarily music videos, but I'm interested. We've watched a lot of your videos preparing for this. Stuff. It's a lot of kid stuff. There's also adult stuff.
Yeah.
As well. And really cool. I mean, like watching your stuff, I think all of us were impressed by the quality. Like it's very easy to watch, high quality, entertaining, all of those things. I have a lot of questions about that. One is something we talked about with like music videos and film. When you're trying to put together a piece to market a kid's toy, is there a director? Is there a choreographer? Do all of the pieces still apply to the things you're doing on that side of the film world?
Well, two things. People are surprised when they come to a set and they see 40 people making it happen.
I would be very surprised.
I mean, it's as big as anything else. And it takes a lot of very specialized people. We have somebody that's just a toy tech. And his or her sole job, is to figure out the toy. Sometimes we figure little tricks out that he has to kind of create and set up so that we can get a specific shot. So he's got to rig it. We have someone that's just a doll stylist. And their entire job is to style those little Barbie dolls and to comb their hair and to curl them. And they come in. We did a thing for a company called Spin Master called Unicorn Academy, and the show's really big on Netflix right now. And so all these dolls with these unicorns, and their hair has to be groomed and styled. And every time you put it in front of a camera, there can't be any what we call flyaways. So they're out there grooming them, and it's a painstaking process. But they're a specialized individual, and they pose the dolls and they make them look lively. And then there's everybody else. There's the cinematographer and his whole crew, first and second camera. You have gaffers and key grips and art department. Our art department for the Paw Patrol job was 16 people. Wow. All making little miniatures and building these things and coming out and having rigs of things that pop up out of the back and stuff that you can't even imagine. And then you have the production staff, which is 3 or 4 people, and you have PAs, and you have what we call the vanities, hair and makeup. We did a thing with some girls that were dancing, so we had a dance choreographer, and they came in and did a prep day. They practiced, learned the whole routine, and then we had the dance choreographer, his assistant on set, and then you have all the vanities, the hair and the makeup, and if there's a lot of talent, sometimes you have 2 of those,
Yeah.
It's you walk on set, you go, wow, these are a lot of people for this little teeny piece of plastic.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And so the stuff that you do, are you on your website? By the way, what is your website address again?
Silofilms.com.
Silofilms.com. Go check it out and check out the work. I think that's what it's titled as, the work or work. And you can see all of the videos of everything that you've promoted and marketed. It's fascinating. As I'm watching that, I'm thinking, okay, Luis And you write it in there somewhere about you're a storyteller. You guys are storytellers. So is that how you approach each of these projects as you're trying to tell the story of whatever it is to the audience? How do you approach it?
100%. There's always some narrative component. And you had mentioned earlier that the work has a high production value. And that's something that we own as a brand. So in the 90s, as I was coming into this industry, I noticed a lot of these commercials just look so cheesy and they're so poorly executed. And I think that's why I got the opportunity to do more work. Is the first job I did, they were like, wow, this looks really amazing. And it's imaginative and it's different. And I'd come from music videos where it was more conceptual. So I kind of brought that same approach to toys. And the one thing that we always hang on to is we don't do every job. Sometimes jobs come in and the budgets just aren't good enough. And I know we're not going to be able to live up to our brand and maintain the quality that we always deliver for our jobs. So we don't say yes to everything. And we take pride in knowing that the work has a certain production value. Additionally, when we approach the job, so we get briefed by clients, and you asked earlier, would you say we're in entertainment space or marketing? We're probably both, but we're probably more marketing. And I've learned a lot about marketing. I didn't go to business school, but I've learned a lot about marketing in the 26 years I've been doing this. And so the one thing we always try to do is couple the product, we're showcasing the features of the product with some narrative element. Usually there's some fantasy associated with the play, right? There's a play pattern. We did a thing for Play-Doh, which was a little pizza delivery scooter. So what's the fantasy associated with that? Oh, that I can be a pizza delivery guy, or that I can own my own Italian restaurant and make a pizza. So the front end of that spot is all about these kids who believe they're pizza delivery guys. Right. So there's a narrative element that we try to include before we get into the showcasing of the product. And it kind of, it demonstrates the play pattern. And then once you get into the play pattern, the narrative sort of tells itself. Now, whether or not we do that through a voiceover or we do that through first person, like the kids actually walking you through it, or we write a song, jingles are really impactful. If you can create anything that's really sticky, right? You find yourself humming the same song over and over again. We've done our jobs as advertisers.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because I was playing a video for all of these guys today, and there was a song in one of the videos, and Sierra said, oh, now I have that song stuck in my head. So there you go. It worked.
Sticky. That's what we try to do, is get something that's really sticky. Right? So if you can hum the brand, hum the song, then the kid, what we're trying to do is create a call to action. So the kid or something goes, hey, Mom, I really want this. Or the mom, vice versa, says, I think that'd be really fun for the kid. When they walk into the store, they remember that and they go, oh, there it is on the shelf. Let's get that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
So you said you're writing, you write a lot of your own stuff? Some of the jingles?
Yeah, I don't write it, but we have a creative team.
Sure.
And so what we'll do is the process is we get briefed. Tomorrow morning, for instance, we're getting briefed on some products from Hasbro. And we hear from the marketing team what their marketing goals are. And then we learn about the product. Sometimes there's been a lot of testing. So there's a lot of science that goes into this. They do testing. They learn from the testing groups. Here are the features that rank the highest. We can't talk about everything in 30 seconds.
No.
So sometimes it'll be 2 or 3 things that we'll key in on. And they've learned that already from testing. We then figure out, okay, what's the smartest way to creatively represent this product? So that's where creative and commerce kind of come together. Right. And we then try to couple that together. We then go with our creative team and we'll brainstorm ideas. And we'll come back and pitch the client 3 or 4 concepts that we think would be really smart for the product. And they typically, there's a little bit of a menu approach. They'll go, we like this script, but we like concept 2, but can we change them? And that's all.
Add avocado.
Exactly. It tends to be modular. And the people we work with are very smart. They're all MBAers. They've been doing it a long time. They're really, these are all blue chip companies. These are, attracting some really top business people from the business schools. So they're all really great, smart people. And then we just try to turn it in creative, but we also know that we have to, talk about the product and showcase what's great and different about this product versus the other product, right?
So the marketing team at, say, like a Hasbro will have a concept. Like this is the marketing concept. This is what we want to.
They don't even have the concept. They just know, here are our marketing objectives.
And then you're coming up with the creative side. And how involved are you still involved in that?
Oh, 100%.
Deeply?
Yeah. I'm the executive creative director. So I bring our team together, and sometimes it can be a creative team of 3, 4 people. Our writer, we have an in-house creative director. Sometimes we bring in an outside art person, just depending on what the need and how big the campaign is. So for a new campaign that we're doing, we've been asked and tasked with coming up with a new visual mnemonic. So that's a big thing. It's a mnemonic that'll last hopefully for a number of seasons. So if you think like coming up with a mnemonic, McDonald's da-da-da-da-da, or whatever.
Yeah.
You think those things, they got to have legs and they got to have longevity. So that's a big process. So for us, the bigger the ask, the bigger our team.
Yeah.
Sometimes if it's a launch of a new product, and it's not an existing product and there's not the brand equity, we'll bring in a lot of people to really kind of brainstorm it. And then we just put it together. We go to concept. They select a concept. At that point, then we flesh out that concept and we turn it into a storyboard.
Yeah.
How do we execute this concept? And then the storyboard gets approved. And then we start creating set renders. We create like, what's the look for our talent? What's the talent wearing? So it reflects the concept a little bit. It reflects the people the demographic we're going after.
Yeah.
So there's a whole process. We get into casting, and then finally we get into production. So all that leads to production.
How long is that process? Because what you've described is like making almost like what it would take to make a feature film. Like
it's
all
the same
of the
process.
steps.
Yeah. There's nothing different in terms of our process and what Steven Spielberg does for one of his movies. It depends ultimately on the client. The bigger the corporation, the more layers, the more approvals. Yeah. And so we can move very quickly with smaller clients because we're working maybe directly with the person that's making the final decisions. At bigger places like a Hasbro, Mattel, a Spin Master, these kind of other companies, there's a collaboration of people. And so there's a lot of directions and things that they're considering, that we might pitch something and the international team will have to weigh in and they'll go, oh, this doesn't resonate here because we don't have this particular, like we'd done a pitch for neighborhood parties, block parties. And the international European team said, that's a very American thing. We don't do those kinds of things here. And so it doesn't connect with our market here. So we had to rejigger the idea a little bit.
Yeah.
So
fascinating.
Something we do here in America, maybe even Canada, but elsewhere it just didn't connect.
Yeah.
So, when we're dealing with a lot of different teams and multiple layers, that process takes longer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to, if you'd allow me, I'd love to come and see some of that, any piece of that, if that's available.
So my studio's in Gardena, just east of, just down the 105. We're right next to SpaceX.
I don't need much of an excuse to go back to Southern Cal and get some Tito's and
exactly.
go hang out on the set someday. Yeah. That would be awesome. Well, I feel like you've described this creative side that you have, and you've described kind of the path getting up to this point, but it feels like maybe this it's not new for you. Creativity may have been something you identified early in your life that was a path. Maybe it wasn't going to end up in this particular area, but that's been something that you've had for your life. This creative ability, creative feel for whatever it may be. Is that off, or do you feel like, or is this something that you've developed over time? And the reason I ask that question is, if you don't have that kind of creativity and that kind of passion, I think it would be really difficult to take a product and as involved as you are and redo that process over and over and over again, unless it's something that you are really passionate about.
To your first question or comment, from a small kid, I used to draw. I just loved drawing. So I had that creative side. Two things I did. I loved sports. I loved competition. And I loved the creative side of things. I loved drawing, and I did it all through high school. I was in art class. I did all that kind of stuff. I didn't know what I wanted to do with it, but I just knew that there was a creative side. I also knew I didn't have the brain. I remember I had when I was a senior in high school, I was always late. My first class was history with Mr. Needham. And I remember him one time going, Luis, someday you're going to have a job, and you're going to have to be at your desk at 8 a.m. And I remember thinking, I'm never going to have that job.
Not me.
I will never have that job because I just don't. My brain doesn't work that way, and it worked out. Now I have to be on set at 6:30, not 8.
Right. Yeah. No kidding.
But the cool part is I do have, like, today I woke up a little bit later and I did a little gym time, and so it is a flexible thing, and it's different and it changes. So in some ways, what I do, there is a routine to it, but it's a different group of people. It's a different kind of creative. It's a different product. It's different, and I like that part of it. It's not as predictable. But there was, when I was going to college, I was just taking all these art classes, and my figure drawing class teacher pulled me aside, and he said, your work's really dramatic. I thought that was a compliment. But I
would take it as a compliment.
I also recognized, boy, there's some amazing artists in this class. I'm not on the same level as these guys. And he goes, you ought to think about getting into advertising or into film, which is still a creative avenue, but maybe doesn't rely solely on your ability to draw.
Wow.
So I realized later, about a year or two later, like, oh, I think he was steering me away from being an illustrator or something like that. And thankfully, his direction actually helped me to go, oh yeah, maybe it's advertising or maybe it's film.
Yeah.
It was just a real pivotal conversation with him that helped me. But yeah, I always knew it would be something creative. And then the other part is, I always liked hustle. So as a kid, I used to make, you remember BMX bikes?
Of course.
So I used to take bikes and I would redo them and I would sell them to my neighbors, make $50, $40. In my early 20s, I used to take cars. I was really into cars. I still am into cars. I would take cars and I would flip them. So I had a bunch of Scirocco's and Rabbits and all these cars. I had MG, and I would take them, I would fix them up, I'd flip them, make $500, $1,000.
Yeah.
So I just liked that hustle, that side of it. And I remember when I was younger, I started working really young, and I had jobs like a paper route, and then I worked as an assistant janitor, then I worked at Jim May's Chevron, and it just had a given wage. You made minimum wage. Yeah. And then I got a job at Farrell's Ice Cream Parlor when I was in high school. There was a Farrell's in Torrance.
Absolutely.
And the idea that if I worked harder, I could get tips and I can make more money. I just thought, that's what I want to do. If I hustle and I work hard and I'm creative and I'm ingenious, I can be rewarded for my effort. And so I knew from early on, whatever it is, I'm going to do my own thing.
Well, it's great life advice. And we're not even at that section in the podcast yet where we talk about all of your best advice. But I think you just gave some, like hustle, creativity, being willing to work. All of those things are still like maybe the most meaningful in your work life.
Yeah.
Rather than being stagnant, sitting at your desk doing whatever. But if you're willing to get out there and do the work, then you'll get rewarded for it. And I think that's really interesting in your world of marketing, advertising, film, because I don't know, maybe you have some customers that are good, repeat, but you're probably always looking for and out striving for, well, I need to get I'm going to find another contract, I'm going to find another opportunity. And if you don't have the hustle, it's just not going to go anywhere.
I knocked on some doors yesterday.
Is that right?
The door knocking never ends. I mean, I tell people there are three things, at least in my business, and this is probably applicable to any other business. You're a creative, you're a salesman, and you're a sergeant. So you're a creative in that you have the vision for your company. You have the creativity to find really great solutions that are smarter and maybe better than your competition. You're a salesman. You're always out pitching your ideas, whether it's directly to the client, winning them over on what you're pitching them, or if it's literally raising money, or if it's winning over a new client. And you're a sergeant because you got to move the troops sometimes. You just got to push people and you got to go. I mean, in a kind way, but a bold way. Yeah. And sometimes it takes that kind of drive to just get everybody moving in a certain direction.
You know, when you're talking about that, I just had this thought of the market has certainly changed over your time and your career. And so in your position, you have to understand the market forces and what's happening and what people are buying and listening to and what will sell. So how is that challenging? How have you stayed in front of the market and how have you kept your company and Silo relevant for all of this time? It's a long time, since 2005, 2004.
4, yeah.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved culture, pop culture in particular. Admittedly, I'm less interested as I get older in pop culture. So I make sure I surround my team with younger people that are in the middle of, the milieu of pop culture. So they bring a lot of the fresh ideas. I waste a lot of time on TikTok and all those other social platforms, just like anybody else.
Yeah.
But I'm maybe not up on the latest TikTok trend or, whatever's happening. So I'll have some of our creative directors in their early 30s, and we have some other people in their 20s, and they're like, hey, have you seen this new thing? You're like, no, I haven't seen it. Show it to me. Oh, it's brilliant. Let's pitch that as one of our ideas. So all the ideas don't have to come from me.
Yeah.
I think you surround yourself with good people that fulfill the need you have at your company.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have a lot of smart people that we work with.
Surrounding yourself with the right people is also critically important. And then, like you said, not all of the ideas have to come from you, but being willing to understand and listen all of the and taking in all of the feedback. I think that's interesting. Okay, so let me ask you this question. I just came up with this new toy that I think is going to be unbelievable.
Hypothetical or real?
Yes, hypothetical.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I should come up. Now that we've met, I'm going to come up with an. Okay, so I've created this amazing toy, and I, the world needs to hear about it. I don't know how to do that. Why would I say I'm going to go to Silo Films and they're going to help me market this unbelievable asset?
Why would you come to Silo Films to help launch your product? I think because there's a track record. We've launched a number of products and brands and been very successful. Not all of them, have done well, and there are a number of variables that come into play. Right now, the biggest trend for success is having an entertainment component to your product. So kids are consuming entertainment via YouTube and all the other social platforms. They're no longer sitting down in front of a TV watching the Disney Channel or Nickelodeon or the Cartoon Network. They are, to a certain degree, Netflix and all that kind of stuff. So you have to have an entertainment component with your product. And that's actually the largest form of advertising right now. And all I'm doing is kind of reminding you, that great show that you watch, Unicorn Academy, Paw Patrol, whatever you name the shows, Bluey. I'm just reminding them, hey, here's a product from that great show that you love. So to a certain extent, if you don't have that, it's very difficult to get traction in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And so a lot of companies have started their own internal entertainment division, or they've partnered with outside entertainment divisions to produce that content. But when it comes to launching a product, we understand how to come up with creative that separates from all the other stuff that's on the air. So you figure all the content that children and adults, parents, are being bombarded with, it kind of looks the same.
Yes.
So we go, okay, what are all the trends? What is it looking like? Let's do something that's unique and different. So it just pops a little bit more. And then we always, in our creative, we try to have one memorable moment. One thing you go, oh, remember when Dad did that thing and it was really funny? What's that memorable moment that you can take away that after 30 seconds they go, oh, I remember when Kool-Aid came crashing through the wall. Right?
Yeah.
That's a memorable moment.
Absolutely. Yes, that is.
So that's the other component that we like to have in our advertising.
When you're looking at a client, now I know you focused on you have lots of stuff, but it maybe mostly on kind of this youth toy market, but it doesn't. Is that your comfort zone? Do you have to stay in that arena, or could you expand this to other products and services in the market? You just happen to have kind of this niche, and in kids' toys.
We could. I think we could, for sure. The market doesn't really allow that to a certain degree. So commercials is very specific. So you're a food guy, you're a car guy, you're a comedy guy, you're a drama person, you're a soda person. When I was represented at Green Dot, they had 8 directors, and we all had our special niche. You know, we all had our specialty. So there was a guy there that specialized in beautiful products and goods, and he had the Apple account. There was another guy named Gary Sato who was the pizza guy, and he was known as having the best cheese pool in town. You know, when you pull up the pizza, they were like, oh, nobody does a cheese pool like Gary Sato. He's incredible. Right? And he had, I can't remember, he either had the Domino's account or he had the Pizza Hut account, and he couldn't do the opposite.
Oh.
Yeah. So you're very specialized. And so what happens, even as an editor, I'd done all these Olympic spots, I'd done all these sports spots, and the agency came to an editorial house that I was represented by, and they said, hey, we love his work. Has he done any golf spots? They're like, no, he hasn't done golf spots, but he's done all these sports spots. We think he's qualified to do a golf spot. They're like, oh, we're looking for an editor that's done a golf spot. So a lot of people want to see the spot they're doing. They want to see it, you know, boom.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Show me that you've done exactly what we're about to do.
Yeah.
So you get very segmented. The other part is you make contacts in that world. So my network are all the people that are in this world.
Yeah.
And to take a step over, I think we could do food. We do beautiful tabletop work. It's a whole nother set of clients, different group. And it's possible. Pre-2008 crash, we had probably about 6 directors that were all, I basically modeled the company I came from. And I said, let's go out and let's get directors that each have a different specialty. And we had sales reps and all of that. And if it wasn't for the 2008 crash, we probably would have built, you know, a production company that had all that representation.
Yeah.
But it just, in 2008, when all the advertising, 2009 advertising came to a screeching halt. And so you had these A-list directors that were now doing B and C level work, which is where I was at and our company was at, and the directors we represented. So, you know, all of a sudden now we're up for a Scottsdale Mall commercial, and we're competing against this guy that's doing Nike and Gatorade and normally wouldn't even bat an eye at Scottsdale Mall, right?
Yeah.
So we ended up just like the only way to survive coming out of that was we had to scale down.
Gotcha.
And at that point, I pivoted and said, look, we're in a market that's not as competitive. This other market, comedy guys, cars, really competitive.
Sure.
And I just said, let's just focus on this market here, and let's be the best in this market. And that's what we did.
That's awesome. Speaking with Luis Ruiz, Silo Films. Okay, so tell me what it is. If you're looking now back across your career and your company and what you've built, what are some of the things that you think this is what we do really well? This is why clients love working with us.
Well, I think our creative is smart. It's crafty, and it's kind of a little bit different. Like you mentioned previously, the production value is incredible. We do these amazing miniatures. We have this team of miniature builders.
Oh, I love it.
So we do really incredible miniatures. And then we work great with talent. We're able to recognize first of all, the best talent in the world is in LA. But we're able to find out of that group the best talent. So what we offer to our clients are really some top-notch kids and we've worked with, you know, a ton of kids that have come up and gone on to, you know, do incredible things in movies and shows. And we catch them just as they're about to move into, you know, a show on the Disney Channel or a movie or, you know, some of those kinds of things. So
yeah, amazing. Let's talk about some of the lessons that you've learned in your time. Yeah. We like to provide, and everybody has a different story to tell, but we like to provide our listener with kind of these, to finish up the podcast, kind of these business rules, if you will, or foundational business thoughts. Like what are the things you've already mentioned when we talked about it, which I love, about the hustle and the grit and the work ethic and getting out there and knocking doors. Like you said, you were just knocking doors the other day. But what are some of the things, looking back on your career, and as you continue your career, what are some of the foundational lessons that you've learned? And maybe what are some of the mistakes that you've made along the way?
Well, I think the key to success starts with being willing to work hard and being passionate about what you're pursuing. Because the amount of work, when I think of the early days getting into this industry, there was a period where I worked 3 months, 7 days a week. And I was working daytime, I was cutting for, I think it was NBC. And then at nighttime, I was cutting a feature for somebody else. And that would bleed over into the weekend. I never saw my family. I would come home. I was probably doing like 4 hours of sleep at night. And it takes that kind of drive and passion to succeed at whatever you're trying to launch. And by the way, nobody cares more about your company than you do. And if you think, oh, somebody else is going to do that, then you've got the wrong assumption. And you think, oh, it's going to be great. I'm going to start a small company. And isn't it fabulous? I get all this free time and I get to do.
Yeah.
It's no, sometimes my wife will go, oh, I thought you were done with that job. I go, I'm done with the job. Now I got to run the company.
Yeah.
Now I got to do, and I've had executive producers and those kinds of things that help facilitate that. And I have all the support people, bookkeepers, accountants, and lawyers, and all those kinds of things that you need. But there's still all the little things that have to happen. And the work kind of never ends. And you have to sort of say, I'm passionate about this. Otherwise, it becomes a real chore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
the other thing I've learned through a failure is don't move too quickly. There was a company I started with a friend of mine called Digital Warehouse, and we thought we just thought we would sell goods. And so we started thinking, hey, we'll do some drop shipping of various products, proteins, and these kinds of things. And we originally said, we'll just start with a few hundred. But the drop shipper that we were working with had a catalog of 5,000, 6,000 items, and our eyes got big. So before we learned the fulfillment, the return, that whole process, the working of the website and everything else, we said, let's go all in. We just pushed all the chips in. And next thing you know, we're trying to do 5,000, 6,000 products, and you just can't manage it until you learn what it takes to be successful in that particular sector.
Yeah.
And we just moved too fast. If we would have just started, so we ended up folding because we were just overwhelmed.
Gotcha.
We just took on too much. And I learned, just start small and do the little things, get really good at the little things, learn the successes and pitfalls of your company or your particular area, and then take that application and then grow it. But don't try to learn it when you're trying to do it at a massive scale.
Yeah.
Because it's absolute failure. You're guaranteed for that. So
yeah, I don't think you're alone in that. I think there's lots of stories about jumping in, having a little success up front, and all of a sudden things come crashing down.
Yeah.
As we're on this kind of personal development side of the podcast, is there a life philosophy that you follow? Are there certain books that you read? Are there podcasts that you listen to? How do you keep yourself motivated on a daily basis?
I love Guy Raz and How I Built This. He interviews, I don't know if you've listened to his podcast, but it's fantastic.
Absolutely.
He's interviewing entrepreneurs, and they're talking about the launch of their company. And it inspires me to see that most companies have gone through some difficult periods, and they've had to figure out ways to pivot or solutions. And some of those have worked, and sometimes if the first or second try doesn't work, you have to kind of keep moving forward. So it takes a lot of grit. That's one thing I learned from these other entrepreneurs is it takes just a lot of grit. And a lot of them have come from very difficult backgrounds where they've learned to sort of muscle through adversity, right? On one hand, yes, you want to be creative and you want to have a vision and but there are going to be bumps in the process. And if you don't learn to weather that, you don't have the capacity to weather that, that's when it becomes difficult to succeed. So I love Guy Raz. I love that podcast.
Yeah.
And I just, I love Shoe Dog and some of the other, great, other stories that are pretty incredible. And I mix it up. I like a lot of nonfiction. I mostly read nonfiction.
Yeah.
So I'm reading a really boring book right now from Will Durant, the history of history, but I've learned to like history. So
yeah, I kind of tend, I tend to be the same way. I'm listening to a book on Washington right now by Ron Chernow, and it's fascinating. but it is long. I mean, I've been listening to it for 2 months. I still have 24 hours left.
Wow.
It is long and it's in depth, but it's fascinating. And there's so many lessons. One of the things I picked up from that, and I don't know if we'll ever be able to do this again, but the way that colonials, like this is in the middle of, actually it's at the end of, near the end of the Revolutionary War, and George Washington is communicating with Cornwallis from Great Britain, and the correspondence between the two, the way that it's written and spoken, it feels like we just lost something.
Oh yeah.
As we've, I don't know if matured is the right way to say it, but the use of language to communicate was just different, and it feels really meaningful.
It does seem, as you go back and you read letters from 1800s, you go, and even many of them were uneducated, and you would go, this guy's a really great writer.
Yeah.
He's got command of the language more than I do and most of my peers and people I interface with, and so I think that was more common, and it forced people when you wrote to be more articulate. So I think the level of communication certainly was different then, and we've got different types of communications now.
Sure.
Emojis do most of our communicating these days. So not that we're bad, we just use a different type of language. So one thought I had, though, that to go back about companies and stuff, and finding your path and success, I think if you pursue that which interests you and that which you know, and sometimes you'll be in a business and you'll see that there's a void in this particular area. My daughter worked for Amazon, and she was like, oh, I want to start my own company and all that kind of stuff. And I go, that's great. I go, while you're there, look for something that's a little gap in the business model. And if you can find that gap, there's your business. I said, go out, be the third party company that then services Amazon and fulfills that particular need.
Sure.
Right? And so, like, I've started another company called Product Pop, because we've found that recently companies have been coming to us going, hey, we're going to be posting all this stuff on Amazon, Shopify, Etsy, and we need shots of our product. So we were doing that as we were shooting their main product for broadcast and for social. We would then package for an additional price a photography team that was shooting all this product for them. And we went, I think there's a big market for this. So we're launching in January. We launched this new company called Product Pop. Which will be focused just exclusively on shooting product. We hope to help it pop for wherever you put it, right?
That's great.
But for us, it was just a little pivot. It was a little gap in the market. And we're like, hey, this makes sense.
Yeah.
And we already know this space. We're not relearning it. I'm not like, hey, you know what? I want to join the NFL, or whatever it is, right? You kind of go, hey, I want to go do this other thing. Well, it has nothing to do with what you're already doing in your knowledge base.
Yeah.
So
but this is
jump
aligned.
in someplace where and that you're comfortable, and you'll see these little opportunities that just start popping up.
I was listening to a podcast the other day because you mentioned passion and finding something that you're doing well, and you mentioned this finding something that's missing in the marketplace. When my kids were growing up, we used to love to go out in the evening onto the great golf courses around Utah, and we would go search for golf balls. That was our.
I did that as a kid,
and so we would be looking around, and I would always say to the kids, if you want to find golf balls, you have to look where no one else is willing to look, and then you'll go and you'll find all the golf balls. And that was my great fatherly advice, and it tended to work out a little bit. But I was listening to this podcast about being passionate about what you do and following your passion versus finding or determining what you're good at doing. Maybe not versus, but related to determining what you're good at doing and then being passionate about what you're good at doing. And I thought that's interesting advice, because I may be passionate about opera.
Sure.
But I can't sing. So, I'm never going to make any money in opera, but I may have a good ear and I may be able to produce or something in that world. So finding what you're good at that aligns with your passion. And it feels like that kind of fits in with your story, that you didn't really have this is my path. This is where I'm going to end up. But you just walk down your talents, what you were really good at doing, and develop that around your passions.
Yeah, in some ways, the doors just opened up for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about being at the right place at the right time. And it wasn't accidental because I sort of made those opportunities happen by pursuing it and working hard and having people recognize a certain skill set. So that's one route, is following that passion and pursuing it actively. And I guess another route is like, you think of the people that did Warby glasses and all that. You know, they were all in just graduate school and they went, hey, let's, you know, why do these glasses cost me $400? There's got to be a cheaper way to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was their passion, but they just felt like, hey, here's this gap in the market. Why don't we get these glasses done for, you know, 1/10 of the price?
Yeah.
And I think we'll be really incredibly competitive in the marketplace.
No.
And it's turned out they are, and they're really successful.
You know,
so I think
that's
that's the other way to go too, is you just go, hey, look, we love business and we're good at business, and let's find the gap and let's go chase it down.
It's such a great point. It's such a great point, because I don't know if you're exactly right. I don't know if anyone sat there and said, I'm really passionate about glasses.
Right.
But they found something missing.
Yeah.
In the marketplace.
But they're passionate about what they're pursuing. They're passionate about their business.
No doubt.
You know, and you hear about their story, and they're in the garage and they're just making it happen. And
yeah.
You know, most startups are like that, you know, where they don't get paid for 2 or 3 years. Well, you better be passionate about the company that you're building.
Well, how many times do you hear that story about successful companies? I mean, you said it yourself. Like, grit is meaningful. Work ethic is meaningful. Sacrifice is meaningful. And I don't know if I can think of a success story that doesn't have those foundational elements as part of the story.
100%. And you also, I think, have to have a personality that you're okay with a little bit of risk.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody is. Everybody wants the security. Most people, I think, want the security. They want to know there's a paycheck at the end of the month. And with that, you know, you have to make that risk assessment. You know, are you in a place to make that risk? Do you have the personality to deal with that, right? So I think my wife's friend, I asked her what her dad did, and she goes, oh, he's been a millionaire a few times. I go, what does that mean? She's like, well, he's had a couple of businesses that have been really successful. He sold them, and then he's lost it on the investment of his next business. So he's been up, he's been down. And I was like, that's a real specific personality type that goes, I'm willing to go all in again. I know I just lost my last bet, but I'm willing to try it one more time.
Well, that's another interesting story, because I think that's something that you also see in the market, is people who have found success and have been really successful and then lost it, understand what it took to be successful, and can reinvent themselves and do that again. So there is certainly something about going through that, having that experience.
Well, I think what that is self-belief.
Yeah.
I think you are the commodity. You bet on yourself. And it takes incredible confidence to be in that position, to say, the last one didn't work, but I'm still the same person. I'm still smart. I still have incredible skill set. I just, maybe there's a learning in that process. I'm going to take those learnings, apply it to the next round. But it just takes a self-belief.
You know, it's probably, I would say that you may have it in your own industry. You may look around people you work with or people who work with you and identify, you know, this person is extremely talented. This person is more talented than I am talented. But that element of risk, willingness to take a risk, self-belief, is not necessarily encapsulated. And so they might just stay in that,
and that's fine.
Fine. Totally. Yeah.
I need those people.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
We all need them, and they're great. I need them to be talented, and I need to bring their skill set and their insights to what we do. And some people just feel more comfortable in that space, and that's okay.
Yeah. And so I think the point there is, like, you know, if you want to achieve that next level, risk is going to be part of it. And you just have to determine for yourself if you're willing to take that risk or not.
Risk reward. There's always that balance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, This has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
I've really learned a lot. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
I think our listeners are going to really enjoy it. Silofilms.com
Yes.
is the website. Where else can they check out your stuff? YouTube and all the socials?
YouTube, Vimeo. People put it up on their sites. They did the Toys That Made Us. You remember that show on Netflix?
Yeah.
When they did a show on Barbie, they happened to show their competitor Bratz, and I had done a bunch of Bratz commercials back in the day. So I was like, there's my commercial. Anyway.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's popped up in various places.
Yeah,
so.
I think I saw an episode of didn't they do one on the Cabbage Patch Kid? The Toys
Cabbage Patch, Ninja Turtles, Barbie, Hot Wheels, all the iconic brands.
Yeah, the Cabbage Patch craze was nuts. Okay, before I let you go, do you have is there one particular commercial that you produced that you just think this is my
We've done a ton that we've loved, a lot of fun. I'd say probably my favorite one was when there was a guy that got the license for Star Wars drones, and he came to us and said, I don't really know what I want to do, but I want it to be epic, and I'm going to do a theatrical release. So in other words, we're going to do like a 2-minute theater spot that'll run before the movies. Oh, and it was right when I forget which Star Wars, but the relaunch of Star Wars. So we're like, wow, this is an open slate. This is great. So he had told us his story about, which was kind of my story, when Star Wars had come out in 79 or 78, and how he was just a kid and he was amazing. And I remember feeling the same thing. I was in middle school.
Yeah.
And I remember coming home from the film going, oh, if only I had a wing fighter that I could fly and all that kind of stuff. So we came back and we pitched him. We said, what if we tell your story, our story, all of our stories, as a kid going to the movies, coming out of the movies, feeling wowed by the experience and the wonder of it all. And now you can have that experience by going to fly these drones. Flash forward, this kid is now a dad. And for Christmas, his son gives him one of these. He had like the old Kenner. Do you remember Kenner came out with all the Star Wars toys?
Yeah.
So he had that as a kid.
Yep. I had the X-Wing fighter.
Totally. So we basically told that story. We found an old theater in San Pedro.
Nice.
We shot at this theater. We recreated the 70s. I had my kids in there as extras in the back waiting in line. And he goes into this theater. He has this big wow moment. And then flash forward later, he gets this drone. And then we flew in. We shot at a warehouse where they fly all these drones. And we flew in these drone racers. For a while there was the Drone Racing League. It was covered by ESPN and all that kind of stuff. And I think it still exists. And we had these amazing drone pilots. And we flew like 5 or 6 of them in from England. For whatever reason, the best ones were in England. So we flew them in for this thing, and we had all these drones. We had, this battle between drones, and that was maybe one of the funnest jobs because it was like a mini movie.
Yeah.
And it was just fun to do, fun to execute. It took us 3 days to shoot, and we cast some incredible talent. And in the end, it was just a blast.
That's amazing. Now, where can we go see that?
That's on my website.
That's on the site. Okay. We'll go check it out. Silofilms.com. Luis Ruiz. Man, it's been a pleasure. Let's go get some Mexican food sometime.
I love it.
All right?
Let's do it.
Appreciate you being here.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Know Your Ship podcast presented by eHub. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.